Imagine a world where nuclear confrontation is no longer just a chapter in history books, but a real and growing possibility. A world where global superpowers are not just exchanging warnings, but engaging in direct military actions. That world may not be decades away. It may be forming right now. Recently, a powerful statement captured global attention. Donald Trump publicly declared, "I will prevent World War III." It was a bold promise made at a time when international tensions are rising across multiple regions. Wars in Eastern Europe continue to reshape alliances. The Middle East remains unstable. China and the United States compete for dominance, and nuclear powers are increasingly testing each other's limits. But what does it really mean to prevent World War III? Is the world truly on the brink? Or is this political rhetoric amplified by global uncertainty? To understand the seriousness of this moment, we need to look at the broader geopolitical landscape. The Middle East has once again become the center of global tension. Tensions between the United States, Israel, and Iran have escalated sharply. Military operations, retaliatory threats, and strategic posturing have pushed the region into one of its most dangerous phases in recent years. Iran's leadership has repeatedly warned that any large-scale attack on its territory would trigger a severe regional response. At the same time, Israeli officials have emphasized that they will not allow Iran to strengthen its military or nuclear capabilities. The United States, positioned as Israel's strongest ally, faces a delicate balance. On one hand, it seeks to deter Iranian aggression. On the other, it must avoid triggering a wider war that could pull in multiple global powers. And that is where the fear of World War III begins to surface. When we talk about a world war, we are not just talking about two countries fighting. A global war involves alliances activating defense treaties. It involves economic warfare, cyber warfare, energy disruptions, and potentially nuclear deterrent strategies coming into play. It is a chain reaction that can move faster than diplomacy can respond. Right now, multiple flashpoints exist simultaneously. Russia remains locked in conflict in Ukraine, straining relations with NATO countries and the United States. China continues to assert power in the South China Sea while increasing pressure around Taiwan. Iran maintains influence through proxy groups across the Middle East, and global energy routes, including critical waterways, remain vulnerable to disruption. The Strait of Hormuz, for example, is one of the most strategically important oil transit routes in the world. A significant portion of global oil supply passes through this narrow waterway. Any military disruption there could send energy prices soaring, destabilizing economies from Asia to Europe to North America. Inflation would spike, supply chains would tighten, markets would panic. This is why geopolitical tensions today are not just regional issues, they are global economic threats. When Trump says he would prevent World War III, he is tapping into a very real fear shared by millions of people. The fear that miscalculation, pride, or political pressure could push nations into a confrontation no one truly wants. Supporters argue that strong leadership and aggressive negotiation tactics can deter enemies. Critics argue that bold rhetoric can inflame tensions rather than calm them. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. Preventing a global war requires more than military strength. It requires strategic patience, diplomatic communication channels, intelligence coordination, and economic leverage. Behind the scenes, back-channel talks between governments often work to reduce misunderstandings before they escalate publicly. History shows us how close the world has come before. During the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the United States and the Soviet Union within days of nuclear conflict. It was diplomacy, not dominance, that ultimately pulled the world back from disaster. Today's geopolitical structure is even more complex. Instead of two superpowers, we now have multiple influential states with nuclear capabilities. The risk of regional conflicts drawing in global players is higher simply because the global system is more interconnected. But are we actually at the brink of World War III? Most experts say not yet. While tensions are high, there are still strong deterrence mechanisms in place. Nuclear weapons, paradoxically, often prevent large-scale wars because their consequences are too catastrophic to ignore. Economic interdependence also plays a major role. Major powers rely heavily on trade relationships. A global war would devastate not just enemies, but their own economies. However, the risk does not come from intentional global war. It comes from miscalculation. A missile misinterpreted, a drone strike that escalates unexpectedly, a cyber attack traced incorrectly. In today's high-speed digital military environment, decisions are made in minutes, not days. That is why global leadership matters more than ever. Diplomatic summits, intelligence sharing, military hotlines, and international organizations like the United Nations all serve one purpose: to slow down escalation before it spirals. At the same time, domestic politics influence foreign policy decisions. Leaders often face internal pressure to appear strong. Elections, economic challenges, and public opinion can push governments toward tougher stances internationally. The current global situation reflects a delicate balance between deterrence and diplomacy. On one side, nations demonstrate strength through military exercises, sanctions, and strategic alliances. On the other side, they maintain quiet negotiations to prevent those demonstrations from turning into active warfare. So, when we hear bold statements about preventing World War III, it is important to view them in context. They reflect real tensions, real risks, and real fears, but they do not necessarily mean a global war is inevitable. The world today stands at a crossroads. It can choose confrontation, driven by pride and power struggles, or it can choose calculated restraint, guided by diplomacy and long-term stability. Global citizens, markets, and governments are all watching closely. Energy prices fluctuate with every headline. Defense budgets increase. Alliances strengthen. And behind closed doors, negotiators work to keep the temperature from rising too high. The coming months will be critical. Watch for diplomatic meetings between major powers. Watch for changes in military deployments. Watch for shifts in economic sanctions and energy trade patterns. These indicators often reveal more about the future than political speeches alone. One thing remains clear: preventing a world war is not the responsibility of one leader or one nation. It requires coordination among the world's most powerful countries, careful crisis management, and an understanding that in a nuclear age, total victory is an illusion. The world may be tense, the risks may be real, but history has also shown that even at the edge of confrontation, diplomacy can prevail. The question now is simple: will global leaders prioritize power or peace? Because in an interconnected world, the cost of getting it wrong would be unlike anything humanity has ever faced.